Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers is a weekly program designed to answer all your questions, including the ones you didn't even know you had, and to clarify the endless debates around the wonderful and fascinating world of sexuality. Join us for real talk about sex from two experts in the field. Richard and Larry Siegel have over 50 years of experience as sex therapists, educators, counselors, and researchers. The Siegel brothers are recognized around the world as trainers of medical and mental health professionals.
Hello and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And still a really cool, awesome big brother.
Right back at you.
Well,
not a big brother,
awesome
though.
Little brother.
Little brother.
I'll take that. Thank you and welcome back. And thank you for joining us. We are coming to you live on Facebook and YouTube. And this is our weekly platform for Sex Talk, even though every day should be time for Sex Talk.
That's right.
This is our time. And we welcome guests and address all the current issues that help keep us stuck in a seems an ongoing pattern of poor sexual health.
Sure.
What's supposed
Maybe
to
one day we can change that.
Yeah. We're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, right? Why can't we get this right?
Well, we are the greatest country in the world. We lead the world in everything that can go wrong with sex and sexuality.
We really do.
We're number one.
Every consequence, every statistic that points to poor sexual health, not only do we lead the world, but like so far and away. Why aren't we embarrassed?
That's another question.
Right?
I mean, that's another question altogether.
Irony.
Why doesn't this bother us?
We're too embarrassed
as a country?
about sex to talk about it, but we're not embarrassed that the world sees what a sexual mess we are.
Right. Well, that's why we do what we do. That's why we've been doing this professionally for over 30 years, sort of individually. We've got certainly almost 60 years between us. And, just trying to chip away at this. It would be really nice if we woke up one day and we got it. Yeah. We understand what sexual health is. We
all get that email that says we don't need you anymore.
That's exactly right. I will be dancing in the unemployment aisles. Right? As a matter of fact, that's one of my fantasies. Not my best fantasy, but certainly one of my fantasies. But see, there's that cloud of reality that also tells me that I'm allowed that fantasy because as long as I live in this country, it's probably never going to be a reality.
Yeah. And like we said last week, outrage and frustration seem to be really good motivators.
Exactly.
In this work.
Right? At least to keep us going.
So,
all right, so
one favorite way we like to start is by taking a look at sex in the news.
Yes, indeed. So what is going on in the news? It's kind of hard to find anything newsworthy these days that isn't about the coronavirus. So let's sort of keep that thing going as well. When we look at some sexual issues that are related to coronavirus.
We were hanging on to some hope there a couple of months ago that at least it's not sexually transmitted.
Right. Well, we still can't say differently, but as many of you, I am sure at this point,
there was a study,
are aware of, because this has really been, and I would also say overhyped since it came out. It's amazing what the headlines around this has become. But there was a very small study done in China a couple of months ago, about a month and a half ago. And what they found is out of 38 patients that they tested in varying phases of corona infection, they found 6 men who actually tested positive for traces of coronavirus in their semen. Right? Now, a very, very small study. I do want to point out that other studies have found different results. Also very small studies, but the headlines that have been all over the internet talking about this is that it is now a sexually transmitted infection. If it's found in semen, it is likely to be transmitted in semen. And we need to really put the brakes on that.
Well, yeah. Right? It's like, remember back in the days of HIV and AIDS?
That's right.
Prevention, education, there was that ridiculous list that somebody sat down and wrote a list of 31 sexual activities and rank them according to risk for contracting HIV, right? From abstaining from sexual activity to unprotected anal intercourse with internal ejaculation.
Right.
And I remember the first time I saw that list, my first thought was, what do you do with this? Tack it up on the headboard? Right?
Well, I'm the only one?
Hey, baby, feel like a 24
That's
tonight?
right.
Ooh,
What do you want to check off tonight?
Risky devil. It's like, I get the point in terms of assessing, risky, more risky, less risky behavior.
Right.
But if you're having sexual activity with someone, it's pretty hard to isolate. We did this, but we didn't do that. We had intercourse,
Right.
but we weren't kissing.
Right. Well,
Right?
and
We
that's
made
true.
sure to keep our masks and gloves on while we had penile vaginal intercourse.
Right. Right.
You know.
And that's true. But, again, taking the lessons from those days, we also know that just because you can find traces of the virus in a particular body fluid,
Right.
it does not mean that it is transmissible that way. When we look at HIV in saliva, when we look at HIV
In tears even.
tears, it cannot be transmitted.
Just because it's there doesn't
That's right.
mean it's a
And,
sufficient
and I'm not going to
dose.
sit here, I don't have a crystal ball, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that it is absolutely not possible to transmit coronavirus this way. But so far, even though we're in the beginning of this, the odds are really against it, because some of the information we do already have is that viruses in general that are found in semen and in other sexual fluids as well are not reproducible. In other words, they can't replicate in those fluid vehicles. And that right there kind of curtails the likelihood of transmission. Is it possible that we may find that it can? Yes. Is it likely? I'm going to vote no.
Is this likely the most unsexy thing I've seen in the news in a long time?
Well, that's
Absolutely,
the other thing.
Yes.
Yes. Now talk about something we can do something
Oh
about.
my God.
right.
I thought once I saw many, many years ago the first strobe light photograph of a sneeze, that would be the most disgusting image I'd never get out of my head. Wait.
Are you
Let's
all
talk
familiar with the toilet plume?
Oh, Lord.
Now, one thing that has been found fairly recently, and this is also a couple of months ago, is that there are traces of coronavirus in fecal material. For those of you who really like technical jargon,
Poopies.
poop. Okay, so we can find corona in fecal matter, and there is transmission that does seem possible with oral fecal contact. And they've usually been describing that as inadvertent, right? Now, that's a whole nother set of mental images as well. How do you
my
get
goodness.
inadvertent
Accidental.
oral fecal contact? Remember the old Reese's peanut butter commercials?
That's right,
How do you
yes.
accidentally get your peanut butter in my chocolate? But that we can see. So this wonderful article that just came out, which gives, I think, very, very good practical advice to one
Take this
small
advice,
way
everyone.
that you can prevent corona transmission in your own homes. I'll just read you the title. Why you should flush with the lid down. Experts warn of fecal oral transmission of COVID-19. So it's not only the inadvertent having your mouth take in somebody's fecal matter, but flushing toilets.
So you're getting, if you haven't heard this phrase before, you're getting the mental picture of a toilet plume. And what happens
Right.
when you flush and what comes pluming out of the toilet.
Right. Now, that's actually an image that I've not been able to get out of my mind for years. The first time I ever saw one of those same slow motion type of, time-lapse photographs of a toilet flushing. A lot of people don't realize that when you flush the toilet, it does send up sort of a plume of
Droplets.
aerosol that could actually reach your ceiling. So if you're following
Or
somebody
your
in the
mouth if
bathroom,
you walk in the bathroom.
That's right.
A minute after they did.
That's right. So if you're walking in the bathroom with your mouth open anyway, we're going to have to look at that as a separate issue. But one of the things they also suggest is when going into a public restroom, washing
Don't.
your hands. No, do, but wait 20 seconds after somebody else has flushed the toilet. If you're going into a
To
stall,
let the
or
duty
you're-
particles
That's
drop
right.
to the ground.
That's right. If
Great.
you're even in your own home, if somebody else is using the bathroom, wait 20 seconds, let that plume subside. But
This is gonna,
it's forcing us to think
we're never
about
going to
things we
shake
never wanted to think
hands
about.
again. We're never going to use public bathrooms again unless we're wearing hazmat suits, right?
But see, the thing is, if we take these small practical precautions,
It said 80% could be prevented
That's right.
if you close the lid when you flush.
That's right. Small
We
practical
should
precautions
press
we can
on.
do. We could all do these things. Right? So a taste of the news.
Oh, you had to say taste while we're talking about fecal particles in the air. Okay, our main topic tonight is this excitement we have around this survey. We want to direct everybody to it after we speak to our guest tonight, the lovely Dr. Sharna Striar. She's been on the show before, and she approached me last week to work with her on a survey, a 10-question survey called Sex in the Era of COVID-19 Pandemic. And we're hoping to get just a good cross-section, kind of a snapshot to see how people are coping, to get a feeling for how people are living during this time, who they have found themselves sheltered at home or quarantined with, if there's significant relationships, intimate relationships.
It should also
families.
point out that this is an anonymous survey. You don't have to give any identifying information. It doesn't cost anybody anything. And it really can help provide some good information in helping us understand how to really work with people.
This will be very helpful to therapists. And we'll talk more about how you can find that survey after we spend some time meeting with Dr. Striar.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, hello and welcome back. And we are so happy to welcome a return guest and dear friend to the show, Dr. Sharna Striar.
It is my pleasure to see you two.
Same
Hi.
We're honored to have you back, and certainly at a good time. I was very excited to have you contact me last week with this new project you had in mind, and incredibly honored that you thought of me to work on this with you.
It's such an incredible situation that suddenly got dropped on the whole entire world. And so I think the first thing I saw was people's shock. What do we do? How do we configure this? How do we manage to make it happen? Some people are alone. Some people are with family. Some people are with new relationships where they shelter together. Some people are with their significant others or their spouse or children or family. And so as I began to talk to people and step into their ways of adapting to the situation and the impact it's having on them, I thought, yes, I'm gathering anecdotes, but wow, wouldn't it be really great to get some actual data?
We want to know the sexual impact on intimacy and on sex itself, and how people are having sex or not having sex.
Or how they're relating and what that impact is on them. Like, for instance, if you are, what I'm finding is whatever sort of the situation is, whether you're inclined to depression, to anxiety, to difficulty sleeping, certainly that gets more exacerbated as people are coping with this and the unknown of it. And so it is forcing people to really maybe go a little further. They can't run from their issues or distract themselves.
Right.
So they are, and in this case, with some help, learning how to negotiate this new normal and deal with these issues, and sometimes much more effectively.
And as you said, this is unprecedented. And even solid couples who are used to being together are probably not used to being together 24/7. And we were discussing this the other day. If you have a conflict or a fight, you can't walk away.
That's right.
If there's no place to walk to.
There's no safe place.
There's no safe place. But what is great is that one can create that safe place.
Right.
One can
That's
create
what we're encouraging.
and developing the tools for it. So for instance, and there's been a number of articles about this, how does it impact, for instance, because in my practice, I deal primarily with millennials. many of them are single. And so they may be by themselves, but anxious to date, or they may be separated from a relationship. How do they, connect and establish rapport and express some of the more intimate erotic needs? And it's lending itself to something that I think is very sweet, which is more courting behavior, because without the physical interchange, sort of, the touchy, the feeling, kind of acting on the chemistry, they have to really explore each other in a more intimate, personal way. They have to talk. They have to learn about each other.
You mean
And
dating,
Right.
right? Dating.
Well, we used to call dating.
Something so different to this
Yeah.
generation that's so used to, they're used to
Mhm.
hooking up online, but then it goes right to hooking up in the real world. So
Exactly.
removing that from the equation, now people really have little choice but to learn how to court. I like that you use that word,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
online.
And
Yeah.
that is actually something that's surprising to attach or associate to millennials, because we do tend to think more of hookup culture as opposed to sort of intimate bonding as the standard for relationships. But, at the same time, we also can't ignore the fact that, there is a spike in Tinder and hookups that are happening at the same time. So it's, to me, to see it really go in both of those directions speaks to, for lack of a better word, a confusion that a lot of people have about how do you form intimate connections and erotic connections.
Well, I think it also spoke to the level of a tolerance you have to risk, which is also something I think that particularly young people can grapple with. With the elimination of having to deal with who's picking up the check, or who's going to, how quickly are we going to move into the sexual arena? I mean, it lends itself in many ways to a higher, more personal level of communication that has the capacity of really bonding. Now, if that rapport is not present, which oftentimes, of course, is clouded by the cloud of lust and erotic desire.
And intoxicants.
Yeah.
Yes, that you might say, I really don't have anything in common with this person. Now, couples that are together, that's an interesting thing. There could be a pet, that a children. So privacy becomes a high commodity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what oftentimes is suggested is they have to really carve out that time, just like you have to carve out a date. And one couple I spoke to this morning, I thought it was so sweet. They set up an intimate dinner in their living room. They changed their clothes into more, dress up clothes.
Right.
Because, we're all walking around very leisurely.
Hmm.
And they had an intimate dialogue, and that just led to, very naturally, to a little bit more of sensual touching.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that certainly myself and therapists like me are encouraging, So it's really talking about how to listen to one another, how to reflect, not to sort of create your story about what you imagine that person is feeling, but to inquire, which I call perception. And also because you're 24/7, there, you may be going down a path where you're not hearing, you're getting too emotional, and you got to have a safe word, really. And my kind of funny word is pineapple, where it's like, I have to step away and collect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So your 3 Ps again?
Paraphrase, which is what I hear you say, is that you asked me for my 3 Ps. Is that right? And,
Very good.
perception check is, you seem to be in a good space right now. Is that true?
Yeah.
And pineapple is, Pineapple.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'll come back to that conversation. I've just lost my perspective.
Well, if I can add
Right.
on to that, because I want to explain that as well for the people that are listening, that this idea of having a safe word, it's not really just a sexual thing. It really is a very, very important thing. And, you know, when I was working with couples, I had always sort of had a rule that when the communication is getting lost in the emotion, when anger, frustration, all of this stuff is rising, somebody has to call timeout. You have to stop. We cannot communicate through emotion. Now, of course, the person that calls time out has the obligation to call time back in, but they need to take that rest. They need to take that break. And so many people try to push through their anger and their frustration, and ultimately it ends up being sometimes a calamity.
Sure.
That it just cannot work because you can't be successful.
I like the way you explained that. Absolutely. And the key thing in all that is that they're not walking away from it. They're just stepping away so they can gain more objectivity and come back to it.
Right. Let the emotion die
often,
down.
I also often use, I tell couples, we're going to borrow from the kinky folks and use a safe word and tell them to make it as ridiculous as they can.
Yeah.
So something that can break the tension.
Yes.
Right. But I always warn them, and it can't be used to shut down. It can't be like a stiff arm, like, I don't want to listen to you anymore. It has to be like you said, I need a, you know, this is like blowing a whistle and throwing a flag in a game, right? Somebody has to say, whoa, we're there again. We can't go there. We promised we wouldn't go there.
Because people have to remember that this is going to end. Right? In one way or another, this is going to end. We're going to go back to some semblance of our lives without being shut in and sheltering and distancing.
Which would be good for us to talk about, how to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that I do ask people, and to be honest with you, I've usually asked this of men, to ask themselves this question before they react. What is more important right now? Making this work or being right? Right? What's more important, being successful or being right? And how many times have we forced that issue? We beat our partner over the head with our being right, and now we're alone and we're by ourselves. They're gone. So what did we win? Talk about a Pyrrhic victory.
Exactly.
So let's talk about this survey and the wonderful information, and again, what prompted you to, what all of this led to.
Well,
you wanted to know, and what are we asking folks to share with us?
we're asking them to share how they essentially quarantine. What were the conditions, the circumstance with whom during that time? How did they experience their sexuality? How did they express it? What did they learn? How did they connect with the people that they are, intimately involved with or casually involved in? But then also, as a result of this, and as the quarantine is lifted and as we have to socially distance, how is that going to be? Are they going to be more inclined to stay away? Like here, they're anxious for contact, but how does that operationalize?
A lot of people are afraid of kissing and touching for fear of getting the virus.
Right. There's a real approach avoidance that people are having. Exactly,
which in many ways is part of the issue that we therapists deal with, is that approach avoidance. But what I'm finding is that some of that has sort of fallen away. I think people are more comfortable in expressing their vulnerability, their desire for connection, and are absolutely sort of confronted with, how do I go about that? But my recommendation is that you have to do your best to maintain some order of social distance and kind of just be aware of all that. Now, let's face it, we all want physical contact. So I'm not saying to avoid that. It's just something that you have to talk about with your partner in the context of the relationship. Certainly, the partner, who knows? It may be just like in the age of AIDS that, okay, let's go down and be tested.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever it is. I think it has to be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we're gonna direct folks to the Facebook page for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers, and there you'll see a link for the SurveyMonkey questionnaire, the survey that Dr. Sharna Striar and I collaborated on, and we're really looking forward to hearing from folks and getting that snapshot to see.
And your feedback would be so helpful, so that we could talk about it in a more grounded, quantifiable way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really important to have real bits of information, not just these broad strokes, I think, that we've been hearing.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that I'm hoping for the future is that I guess the opportunity for more openness, for more, as I said, the courting behavior, for more kind of caring to know about yourself and about the other person and sharing. I think a lot of that got lost. And I think that this has been actually something that this pandemic has offered to us.
Yeah.
And I am hoping that it stays.
Yeah, another silver lining.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again. We are really always pleased to talk with you and grateful to have you join us.
It is my pleasure. It's my
Thank you so
pleasure to
much.
see you guys. You look great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do you. Stay well.
Thank you again, Dr. Striar. Always a pleasure.
Yes, indeed.
You're welcome on the show anytime.
And it's really good stuff. And it's more than just, do people have more sex? Do people have less sex? This is a really good opportunity to break down a lot of the details, which would really help focus, I think, some of the help that people need.
And yes, as she said, I think the question we're most excited about seeing folks' answers to is, once quarantine is lifted, how do you think social distancing in the pandemic era is going to affect the way you develop or engage in intimate relations and sexual expression? In other words, what's this effect going to be on dating as we knew it?
That's right.
It's been weird enough getting used to dating in the cyber age. How's that for making myself sound like
indeed.
a grandpa? I just heard something that meeting online is now the #1 way that people meet.
Well, yes, but
Yes,
again,
it makes sense.
It does, but it doesn't mean that relationships are really created in that
Right,
way,
of
because they
course.
also have the highest failure rate.
Online relationships.
Online relationships.
Yeah, because, how long have you been saying this? You don't, especially online, you're not dating that person for 9 months, right? You're dating their avatar.
Right. Or
their
you're dating the
profile.
idea of that person.
Yeah,
You're
their
dating your
profile.
fantasy.
Sure.
That's
The
really
same
what you're
thing
dating.
you think you fell in love with.
Exactly.
Remember in the old days of AOL, a woman can just put up measurements, right? Bust, waist, hips. And just from that,
Could be inundated.
red hair, 5'3", 36, 26, 36, and just boom, a picture forms. That could be the measurements.
I just got a picture of that. That was a piece of plywood.
That could be a million different women.
Yeah.
But whatever the fantasy machine is going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll take a look at that.
So yeah, thank you again, Sharna. Really appreciate it, and would love to have you on again.
So we have this. I don't know if this is in the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot category or the Sex and Science or Sex and Medicine, but I thought this went away 25 years ago when we mapped the genome, but apparently there's still a lot in the news about this ongoing quest for the gay gene.
Yep.
Well, first, this was interesting, this study, and it touches back to our wonderful conversation with Don Lucas about this insistence, this script that sex is for reproduction, and that's its main biological purpose. Right? Just like we discussed previously, that's not the case. I love how he put it. If you have someone think about all the sex you have had or think you will have in a lifetime, how many of those were motivated by the desire to make a baby?
Mm-hmm.
Right? 1, 2,
Right.
none,
Right.
even
Exactly.
for most parents.
Mm-hmm.
So along similar lines, this study shows that same-sex attraction, homophobes and folks, who use evolutionary science to try and explain away things that they're not comfortable with,
Right.
has long said, there's nothing evolutionary about it since it's gay people can't reproduce, then they'll just be eliminated from
Right.
the gene pool.
Which, first of all, let's just attack that. You want to talk about a perfect thing for the wheel of outrage? Gay people can't reproduce. That is utter nonsense. Right? And for those of you who think that, you're probably looking at people who don't want to have sex with you. Right? That's probably the issue. But of course, reproduction
Right.
has
Especially
no
nowadays,
orientation.
parenting. Yet there are still laws limiting the rights of
That's
same-sex couples
That's
to
right.
parent and adopt in some states.
Exactly. But I think the point with this article is really twofold. Number one, there are still people who are on some kind of quest for a gay gene. And how many years have I also been saying, beware of people that are looking for a gay gene, because the reason they want to find it is so they can
Yes.
fix it.
Remember that great classic line from Bill Maher when he said, "Finally, they found the one thing to change Pat Robertson's
right.
views on abortion."
Right. So again, this idea of gay gene, but and the other part of that issue is also the fact that, again, like you were saying, in terms of evolution, reproduction is supposed to be the number one evolutionary priority, biological priority, but it's not necessarily true. That when we look at same-sex attraction, same-sex relationships, social bonding is as important of a sort of
reason.
species survival and dynamic as reproduction is. So it is very much a part of survival. It is very much a part of just the life that any species can create. And same-sex attractions fits very well into social bonding dynamics. So this idea that it has nothing to do with evolution is completely erroneous. And there is no such thing as a gay gene. Right? Many genes contribute. Many hormones contribute. We're also obsessed with genes, so we got to get that out of the mix as well, because in all likelihood, it's not about genes.
Hundreds of genes interacting
Right.
and shooting chemical messages at each other.
Right.
But what kind of startled me that not only is this quest still going on, but this related piece that shows that apparently people are selling gay gene testing apps.
Yes, for new paranoid parents.
So, I mean, not only is this misleading, it's dangerous. If
Yes.
people are going to start, all Bill Maher jokes aside, if people are going to seriously base a decision about whether or not to proceed with a pregnancy for fear that they're carrying a gay fetus.
Well, sure. Is it really any different than fetal sex selection and preferencing? Right? If they find out, there's a gene that my kid has that may mean there's a likelihood of same-sex attraction, so abort.
Right. Well, I mean, where does it end? Alcoholic genes, obesity genes. Where does the selection?
Right. And that is the problem, and that's also the obsession with this quest for a gene.
A guy named Adolf Hitler had in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About designing the perfect race.
That's right. So, let's stop this nonsense. Stop looking for a gay gene. It does not exist. Stop trying to find ways to justify your own homophobia.
Looking for a heterosexual gene or asking people what happened to them. What do they think might have caused their heterosexuality?
Sure, exactly. Do you think you're heterosexual?
Name?
Brian McNaught.
That's right.
Right? Back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Brian McNaught on
Brilliant,
being gay.
Just switching things that people, gay people have been asked their entire lives.
That's right.
Switching it to heterosexual people. Like, if you're a virgin, how do you know you're straight if you've never had sex with a woman? Maybe you just haven't met the right woman.
That's right.
Do you think something happened to you? Maybe did someone touch
right.
you inappropriately and cause you to be
Exactly.
heterosexual?
Was there anything? Was there any problem with your relationship with your same-sex parent? You know, and I mean, when you flip, they're ridiculous no matter what. But when you flip them around, they become even more ridiculous, and that is the point.
Right.
All right. So let's stop this. Gay people are as normal and natural and part of human diversity as any
In the entire
other
animal kingdom.
part along that continuum. And
Sure.
in every species, we kind of see the same thing. So let's knock that stuff off.
Well, that'll do it for us for this week. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us next Friday and every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
And please follow us on Facebook and make sure you hit that like and share button liberally, as well as subscribe to our channel on YouTube.
See you next Friday for more Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.
I'm Rachel Needle, co-director of Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, and Modern Sex Therapy Institutes is a continuing education provider. We provide continuing education for medical and mental health professionals around the world, and we have over 140 archived workshops on our website, so please check them out at www.modernsextherapyinstitutes.com. Also, we have a number of certification programs, including sex therapy, couples in sex therapy, LGBTQIA affirmative therapy, alternative relationships, transgender mental health care, medical sexology, sex education, and sex counselor certifications. In addition, we offer a PhD in clinical sexology. So please, again, go to our website, check out everything that we have to offer. A lot of our stuff is available solely online from the convenience of your own home or office. We do things live in 8 states and live via webinar as well.